Welcome to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharavana Raghavan.
Sudeep, we've been doing the podcast for over 2 years now, right?
Yep.
And I was just looking up the data. About 50% of our listeners are on YouTube, as in they have to look at our faces and not just listen to us.
Mhm.
Of the 50% on YouTube, 80% of them have found us via shorts. So I was just thinking, it's with so much content going around these days that we are even discoverable via content is a good thing. And that also got me wondering that this 1 minute shorts and reels that is going around, there is so much content being thrown at us every day, which I get as the audience. But what does this mean for advertisers? Because it's just scary for the attention you need to get. There's so much competition, unlike previously. So actually, let's start from the big picture. What do you think this generation is really feeling in this era of endless scroll?
Not just this generation, Sharon. I think every generation that is living through these times is now subjected to this endless scroll, endless choices. And I say that they are reeling under the effect of reels.
Hmm.
There's quite a bit of content, all kinds.
Hmm.
And some of the best minds in the country and the world are engaged in the pursuit of keeping you endlessly busy with just a flick of a finger. And so therefore, too much exposure, too much content, and, therefore, I think too less retention.
When you say endless reels, as in reeling under the impact of reels, what exactly do you mean by that? So what
Well,
is happening to content consumption?
I think, see, every content, every good content that you see gives you some kind of dopamine.
Right.
Now, it releases some hormone in your body. And as long as you have an endless supply of content that can keep giving you that satisfaction, there is a human tendency to keep wanting for more. Right. And so, therefore, now you look around people when they're sitting in their idle time, everybody from any social strata, they have this endless supply of content that they can keep going through till the time something real comes and disrupts them. Otherwise, you will not know where your minutes, hours went. So that is what I meant by too much content, endless supply, etc., etc.
Mhm.
The algorithm has also become intelligent enough to feed you what you really like, feed you what you really engage with, and hence there are even better chances of you, getting stuck in that loop of watching reel after reel. That's from a consumer point of view.
Right.
You asked me from an advertiser point of view.
Right.
Now, previously, advertising was content, was one of the very few content pieces that used to reach us.
Mhm.
Right? When I was younger, and at the risk of giving away my age to everybody who is listening to this podcast, I stayed I grew up in a very small town, and we used to wait for that Sunday evening film on Doordarshan that all of us would watch together, and quite a lot of stuff was kept aside to be completed during the interval. Now, every ad that used to air during that interval was remembered, cherished, sung along, and recalled later, right? Even if the ads were very average. Yeah. There are lots of them. So, you remember this ad of a class full of children, and a teacher walks into the class
Mhm.
and he looks at one of them and says, "Sonu, तुम्हारे दांत तो मोतियों जैसे चमक रहे हैं." Right?
Yes, I do.
And the guy simply says, "क्यों ना हो मास्टर जी, मैंने आज डाबर लाल दंत मंजन जो इस्तेमाल किया है."
Yes.
I mean, so that, and then there was this sun drop ad,
The giant
where
food.
giant food, big poody drops, and the kid runs, etc. So, those are images that are still stuck, or dialogues that are still stuck in our head, not because the ads were wonderfully great, but possibly that was the content.
In fact, those ads needed just one of the things to work, either visual or a tagline or the jingle, just one of it to work. And
Yeah.
because there was so little competition, even if any of this stuck, the job was largely done.
Correct. And we were watching with rapt attention.
Yeah.
I think that was the key.
Got it. So let's get to now. So for fast forward to now,
Yeah.
what challenges do today's brands face in this real heavy landscape? So why is grabbing attention? So one is the struggle to grab attention. And I will also leave you with another question so that you can go on uninterrupted. Grabbing attention no longer seems to be enough though. So what do advertisers do now?
So see, for some amount of time, I handle kids category.
Hmm.
Now, one of the struggle of a kids brand manager is that they don't even know what their competition is. The kid will start from the home to buy a chewing gum. On the way to the shop, they'll meet a friend who has just bought a ball,
Hmm.
and they would be happy to then spend that money on the ball. By the time they reach the shop, they will find a chocolate that has a tattoo free with it, and so therefore they will buy the chocolate and come back.
The share
Yeah.
of pocket money.
Yeah, so it's share of attention actually. So whatever catches their fancy is something that you're competing with, right? and
Absolutely.
s- and as a marketer who's talking to kids is very difficult. They need constant attention. Now I'm sure all marketers feel that way, because your each one of your consumers now feels like a kid in a candy shop, because they've got so much content to look at,
Right.
right? So advertisers would feel the impact when their consumers are no longer bored, no longer waiting for an ad to get completed. They have an option to click on to where they can get rid of your ad, or they can swipe it up,
Right.
etc. So therefore a significant amount of power and choice has shifted onto the consumer.
Okay.
It has become so democratized, and therefore I think brands are competing with fair or unfair competition from all sorts of sources. For what? For a chance to impress their consumers.
Hmm.
Yeah. And as you rightly said, the very first battle is to catch attention, to reach where they are paying attention. And then going forward, the battle is to, when you get the attention, what do you do with it? There are so many things that are catching their attention, from a baby playing in their pram to a dog chasing a kite to any kind of content. So therefore, what do you do with that attention so
Right.
that you are remembered, recalled, and obviously all the brand metrics that we spoke about in the
Yeah.
past, all of them move. So somehow, all of them feel so distant now, don't they?
It really is, right? Because you struggle to get attention.
Yeah,
And once you have attention, then you struggle to retain the attention.
correct,
And when you retain the attention, then you want to deliver something memorable.
correct,
And that memorable must also be useful.
correct,
And if it's useful, it should also drive action. So
correct.
it's a lot for a marketer to do.
I
But
know.
given all this, right? Even then some ads work. Some
Yeah, of
ads you
course they do.
remember. Why and how?
So again, as I look back now, I think there are some indicators that I have for marketers which possibly they can use.
Mhm.
And the reason I have those indicators is because when I reflected on some of my experiences while I was at Pidlite,
Mhm.
and some of the discussions that I had at that point in time, some of the things that I saw that one of the brands did, it gave me some of those priceless lessons that I carry with me. I go back to what our beloved, and he's no more now, Molly used to say.
Mhm.
He gave this definition of Krishna, right? He said
Mhm.
that Krishna says karmanya vadikaraste mafaleshu kadachana. Focus on the karma, or your what you're supposed to do, versus focusing on the result. And coming from somebody who was so result focused, who used all kind of sam dam dand bhed to make Pandavas win, it seems very strange.
Right.
And the way Molly used to explain, was that while Krishna was very, very result focused, he believed in the simple philosophy that once you've figured out the path to the result, you don't have to worry about the result. You just have to worry about the path,
The process.
the process. So people who are clear about the result and the process for the result are the ones that are able to concentrate only on the process.
Correct.
So I put forth this philosophy to all the marketers that don't
Mhm.
worry about engagement, likes, dislikes, and catching attention, etc. And as Sharavana said, a long chain of things that you want to achieve. Just focus on process, and I'll talk about 3-4 things from a process point of view.
Okay.
And I'll also tell you when did this realization dawn on me. Now I have seen this journey of reels and shorts and everything coming up in front of our eyes. We made a commercial for Fevicol
Mhm.
celebrating 60 years.
Okay.
And typical to Fevicol style, it's a long story
Hmm.
with a song.
Hmm.
You must have seen that this commercial called Sofa. Sharma ki Dulhan ब्याह के आई संग में संग 2-सीटर सोफा ले आई करके there's this song.
Yeah.
Now it was a 90 seconder,
Hmm.
right? In the era of reels and shorts, etc., etc. It's just a
Right.
few years back, and it was released on YouTube,
Okay.
right? And it was released like a movie. Uh, and needless to say, it received significant amount of organic interest and views and impressions and created brand equity, etc., etc. It is something that went on to become a huge success. When it was being shown internally,
Hmm.
there was always this nagging doubt that a 90 seconder or a 75 seconder, how will it even survive in
Right.
this age of 6 seconder reels?
Right.
And one of the things that Mr. Piyush Pandey spoke about was around magic of storytelling,
Okay.
and he spoke about the fact that men, women, children alike want to be told stories. They don't care about duration. They don't care about how long the story is. But if the story is told nicely, and if it's a relatable story for them, your consumers will stick around to watch your commercial or watch your story, whatever you're delivering.
Hmm.
And he therefore generated significant conviction within the Pidilite team to go ahead and bat with their full might with this story that he had constructed, and it kind of the point proved itself once the results started pouring in sometime after the campaign. And hence and it was an irony, Sharan, that
Hmm.
in the age of short format content, we were talking about the power of storytelling, right? And the fact that storytelling can be the difference between an ad doing so well and not doing so well, especially when you're surrounded by so many other stories around you.
Okay. I want to push that a little bit, Sudeep.
Uh-huh.
Why does storytelling work?
See, I think there is this basic human need to search for feeling in everything that we do,
Emotion.
right? Emotion.
Okay.
Now it is said, and somebody told me about it, that it is said that anything that can leave you, a human being, touched, moved, awed, or inspired. Yeah, touched, moved, awed, or inspired. It will leave a lasting impression and will be remembered, recalled.
I get that. I get that. They say that even in sales, right? People will
Yeah.
always remember how you made them feel
Feel.
than about what you show them.
Yeah.
And everything.
And it talks about you as a person also.
Right. So does this, okay, I'll tell you why I'm asking you this question, right? I meet a lot of emerging businesses.
Yeah.
And all of them want to make emotional communication and storytelling, expansive communications. And when I sit with the production house for making films, the duration is the biggest conversation we end up having because there is a certain media plan that is in place. And the agency is like, no, you must give me at least 40 seconds, 50 seconds. So you can even use it on digital. I'm like, if I don't have a digital plan, then why do I need this? So I think there are a lot of people glorifying storytelling where effectiveness is of more importance. And my counter argument to that is if it were not Fevicol, if it were, say, a new brand altogether, would they dare to do a 90-second campaign?
Again, same thing, Sharon. I would say you have to be clear about what your objective is. Now, when I'm talking about all of this, I'm not necessarily saying that this is the only way of creating an effective advertising,
Right.
but this is the only effective way of creating a long-term brand. Yeah. So if you are a new brand, you want to get quick salience, you want to create trials, etc., you might not need this.
Mm.
But if you want to create a narrative in the minds of consumers, you've hit upon something that you would want to keep reiterating over and over again, then storytelling is the only way of going about it.
Got it. But you're still going away from the topic.
Yeah.
You're saying storytelling and you're talking about
Yeah.
90 seconders. But we're
Correct.
talking about the constraint the market is today operating with. The
Which
1
is?
minute reels. How do they tell stories in the 1 minute reels?
So
30-second
see,
reels.
I don't think they need to, again, same thing. They don't need to think about the end result. I think the primary objective is to tell a compelling story. Now, if you're able to tell a compelling story in 10 seconds, be my guest. If you're able to do it in 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, it all depends on your and your partner's ability to tell a compelling story. But most importantly, your ability to first develop conviction that I want to tell a compelling story.
So,
Yeah.
how do I know what is a compelling story? How do I judge a compelling story in my
I
community?
think a simple answer is that does it leave you touched, moved, awed, or inspired? But when I was thinking about it, I thought about 3 or 4 things that we can think about or apply
Mhm.
from a path point of view.
Okay.
We all know the result. We want a compelling story.
Right.
But what are the 3 or 4 things that you can think about from a path point of view? The first thing I think is purpose,
Hmm.
right? When you're creating a compelling story, do it for the right reasons, which means that you want to tell a story to the audience, right? Don't pretend to have a story while you're really desperately trying to sell your proposition to consumers, right? There are enough examples on the bad side. Let me take a recent example on the good side, which is
Okay.
Dream 11,
Ah,
right?
right.
Now Dream 11 has been advertising every year. They have found effective ways of making their proposition reach. What I found amazing about their ad this year is that they really wanted to tell a story, and they really wanted to do it in a superlative way,
Right.
right? If one were to look at their ad from an efficiency point of view,
Hmm.
you could cut it in 7 different parts, right? And would have said, okay, the joke has landed, now put a logo and get done with it, right? But they did it for the right reason. They wanted to engage their audience.
Right.
They did it on the during the most expensive media season as well. But since they invested behind it, now kudos to them that they invested. It could have gone the other way also, but they earnestly tried to engage the audience.
No,
So I love the purpose.
I will add to that. Since, like you said earlier, storytelling augments the brand, but
Yeah.
it's not necessarily a tactical exercise for you to engage. So Dream 11 for the last 7-8 years has built up to the storytelling that they're doing. Even last year
Yeah.
they did good storytelling, but
Yeah.
they weren't always telling stories. They were first trying to get you to download Dream 11.
Correct.
After a point of business, I assume they've reached, they now only need to remind you of Dream 11 and engage with it, than to get you to download and introduce
And
the
build
brand.
preference. Build
Absolutely.
preference.
Exactly.
Yeah. They now want you to feel
Hmm.
that amongst all the platforms that I have, this platform speaks my language. They understand me the best. They make me feel the best.
Yeah. Relatability brings credibility with it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Next one.
So second piece, I think also is that when you tell a story, you will have to create a world, right? Now, very interestingly, I have seen good brands, investing considerably into creating a world that is relatable for their consumers.
Hmm.
And relatable is a very interesting term. I've been on all different kind of conversations
Hmm.
where somebody says that my consumer does not live in a house like this,
Ah.
right? Now, there, my simple point is that relatable does not mean that it has to be something that I have today or something that I aspire for, right? Most importantly, you figure out who your target consumers is, and then what is the emotion or the story you want them to hear,
Mm-hmm.
and then you see which world does that story become most effective in.
You're saying
Right?
storytelling first, and the
Yeah.
world needs to fit the story than going after the consumer directly.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Why is that?
So look at examples like, for example, Panchayat.
The TV series.
Now, Panchayat is a story based in a small gaon called Fulera,
Right.
right? Uska panchayat and everything all else around it. Now, by that means, very few people will aspire for it,
Hmm.
and only rural audience will look at it as relatable. So therefore, no urban audience should be watching it, right?
Because they will relate to it. Anyway,
Because the emotions are human.
exactly.
Those are the things that they wanted to make something so simple, so relatable, right? By showing raw emotions. And they thought that it was best placed in a simplistic place like this. So there is very little paraphernalia in the settings, and the entire focus is on the characters and their emotions, right? So therefore, again, the same thing, when you've decided you want to move your audience, you decide what do you want to move them with, what is the sort of story you want to tell them, and then choose the setting accordingly.
Brilliantly put. Okay. I love this one.
Yeah.
Next one.
Okay. Third piece, I think, is, first two were from an intention point of view,
Mm-hmm.
right? The third and fourth are from a execution point of view. Now, third is that now that you've decided you want to tell a story, and the
Mhm.
story would contain some emotion that'll elicit some emotion from your consumer.
Mhm.
Now, then the story needs to be in love with the emotion versus being in love with the product,
Mm.
right? And hence, while if you talk to Facebook and they'll tell you how to make thumb stoppers, that's the new name for reels.
Mhm.
So they will tell you your brand needs to appear in the first 3 seconds of that, right? The drool value has to be higher, etc., etc. If you completely forget that, if you've reached a stage where Facebook has to teach you how to make advertising, then God help you.
I love that.
But apart from that, the fact is that if our core purpose is to
Hmm.
engage with the consumers, then that should become the centerpiece of the work that you're doing.
Hmm.
And your product obviously has to find a way to fit into it very seamlessly. But the ad can't then be, your story can't then be only about the product,
Hmm.
right? If it is all about the product and product is at the center of it, I have very rarely found great ads or great stories with product bang in the middle of it. Very rarely. Yeah. Uh, you've seen Fevicol ads where product just appears at the end of it, just by the way,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I was reminded on MasterCard, right? There are some things that money can't buy. For everything else, there is MasterCard. So there's just a mention. They don't even show the product,
Right.
right? No focus on the product, right? The product talks about an emotion that it allows you to experience priceless things, right? And that works.
Right.
So therefore, from an execution point of view, process point of view, be in love with the story, be in love with how you are making your consumers feel,
Mhm.
and find a natural fit with your product. And I'm sure you will end up creating a memorable brand story for your consumers.
Okay. So you've got three now, which is
Yeah.
doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Creating the world, which is
Relatable. Yeah.
for the story, a relatable world for the story, not
Yeah.
necessarily the consumer.
Yeah.
And then being in love with the emotion than the product.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the fourth point?
Fourth point, I think, is about keeping it real. Now, when you're
Yeah.
finally executing it and you're putting all the elements together, it always pays to keep it real, keep it, what I can say is raw,
Mhm.
especially nowadays, because consumers are now getting to see a lot of honest, unedited, and straight from creators content,
Mhm.
right? So therefore, the more addy you make,
Hmm.
the more cosmetic you make a content, there are chances that consumers will not find it relatable.
Give me an example for this.
Now you have a lot of content creators creating reel
Hmm.
or creating posts, etc., for our consumers on a daily basis, and all
Mhm.
of it is very short in real time, sometimes done live or with minimal edits, etc., etc. So
Mhm.
therefore they find it far more relatable, and hence you will find that celebrity effectiveness has also gone down, because in
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
effort to use celebrity effectively,
Right.
brands tend to make everything fit the celebrity persona. and things start becoming bizarre or too far away from where consumers is versus keeping it real,
Right.
right? So again, let's go back to Dream 11. Dream 11, there are a lot of celebrities in there.
Yeah.
But all of them are subservient to the situation.
Correct.
I think that is how it works. Recently, I saw this interesting work that one of our common friends, Parul, had done on Gladful.
Glad.
They've come up with a milk additive, Nutramilk. And I was quite happy to see what she and Manu have done with their latest effort to promote their product.
Yeah. Shot in the office in the
very real.
Yeah. Beautifully
With a
done.
still camera, beautifully done. They've kept it real. There's no large story conducted.
Mhm.
Yeah. But they've sort of arranged it very nicely, logically, with the effort to make it seem authentic. And somebody who's really concerned with specific problems that the consumers have with regards to milk additives.
Right. And almost like a behind the scenes, right? It kind of creates a sense of transparency for the audience also.
Correct. So again, it reminded me of the fact that the more you keep it real, the more chances you have of consumers finding the brand language, the brand expression authentic, and therefore being ready to engage with you.
I think you hit upon a very good point today, Sudeep, because a lot of us end up compromising on the storytelling because we don't have enough time. We said we need to get things done in under a minute, under a few seconds in these reels and shots. But eventually, immaterial of the length of the content you're creating, it is the storytelling that hooks. Now, storytelling can work in different life stages of the brand. But what you said was a very good point, saying if you want to build a brand for the long term, it is the storytelling that will hook consumers in. And that's what is going to create long-term value. So focus on storytelling.
Yeah.
And I love the 4 elements you said. You said, do it for the right reasons. Make it relatable. Keep emotions over your product being important. And 4th was actually the most fundamental one, but we miss, is that keep it real, because people today can tell the difference between synthetic and natural emotions that are being communicated. I think if people were to keep these 4 points in mind, they'll be able to tell stories pretty much in any platform.
Yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Thank you for listening to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharavana Raghavan. Subscribe and learn more at cobcast.net.